6 months ago, I was at rock bottom. My 5-year marriage was over. My self-esteem was shot, and I could barely look at myself in the mirror. Connor Mitchell, 30, a freelance graphic designer, was living in a downward spiral that seemed to have no end. After signing the divorce papers and selling the house we'd built together, I found myself living alone in a tiny apartment in Denver, working in my pajamas and eating cold pizza for breakfast. Subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to get more stories like this. My name is Connor, and for years, I dedicated myself exclusively to my work. I specialized in creating visual identities for small businesses, developing logos, digital campaigns, and branding strategies. I was good at what I did. My clients were always satisfied, projects were delivered on time, and my reputation in the market was solid. But while I was building brands for others, I was completely losing my own identity. The divorce wasn't a surprise. Marcus and I had drifted apart for years, living like roommates who shared bills but no longer shared dreams. I buried myself in work. He got lost on social media. When we finally tried to talk about our problems, we discovered we weren't the same people who fell in love in college anymore. The separation was amicable, but that didn't lessen the feeling of failure I carried with me every day. Physically, I was a complete disaster. 5 years of total neglect, delivery food, zero exercise, late nights working on urgent projects. My body had transformed into a distorted version of the athletic young man I had been in college. 40 pounds heavier, atrophied muscles, zero energy. Looking in the mirror was a daily torture I avoided at all costs. My personality had always been naturally introverted, but the divorce intensified it to a worrying degree. Weeks would go by without me talking to anyone other than clients on video calls. I was methodical and a perfectionist at work, traits that helped me professionally, but also created a gigantic emotional barrier. Trusting people had become almost impossible. If I couldn't even keep my own marriage together, how could I trust that other people wouldn't abandon me too? What you hear here is just the beginning. The full, unfiltered stories with all the details you can imagine are available now. Check out the link in the description right now. If this story of personal transformation inspires you, hit the like button to motivate me to share more real journeys of overcoming challenges. Elite Fitness Academy occupied 2 floors of a modern building in downtown Denver, and that's where I decided to try and rebuild at least my body, since my mind seemed beyond repair. The place had large windows that offered a view of the Rocky Mountains, creating an atmosphere that blended urbanity with wild nature. The first floor housed cardio equipment and free weights, while the second was reserved for group classes and personal training. Right from the first few visits, I developed a strict routine that became my refuge. I always arrived at 7 in the morning, when the gym was still relatively empty and I could avoid curious or judgmental stares. The morning light filtering through the large windows created golden reflections in the mirrors, and the air always carried a soft eucalyptus scent from the strategically placed diffusers. The constant sound of equipment in motion created an urban symphony of determination that, strangely, calmed me down. Treadmills whirring, weights clanking, the controlled breaths of people focused on their goals. It was like an active meditation that helped me forget, at least temporarily, the problems waiting for me at home. My routine was always the same: 45 minutes alternating between the treadmill, some basic free weights, and stretching. Always with headphones on, playing podcasts about design or business, keeping my mind busy with useful information while my body moved almost on autopilot. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Always at the same time, always the same sequence. That quiet hour became sacred to me. It was the only time of the day where I could focus just on myself, away from the creative demands of clients, away from thoughts about my failed marriage, away from the loneliness that consumed me during the other 23 hours of the day. The gym mirrors, which initially embarrassed me, began to become silent allies on my journey of self-acceptance. 3 months after starting at Elite Fitness, I realized my solitary routine had completely stalled. The same basic exercises, the same low intensity, the same non-existent results. It was a particularly busy Thursday at the gym, and I was especially frustrated with myself. I had lost maybe 7 pounds in 12 weeks, a pathetic progress that only confirmed my incompetence in yet another area of life. At the front desk, while considering canceling my membership and going back to my sedentary life of pizza and self-pity, the clerk suggested I talk to one of the personal trainers. "There's a guy here who specializes in cases like yours," she said with an encouraging smile. "He works with people who are starting over from scratch." That's how I met Gabriel Hayes. He was coming back from an outdoor session, still wearing a slightly sweat-damp t-shirt, his dark hair a little disheveled, carrying a sports backpack that looked like it had seen many battles. 34, a certified personal trainer for 8 years, he had a presence that filled the room without being intimidating. "You're Connor?" were his first words, accompanied by a firm handshake that contrasted with a genuinely welcoming smile. "I hear you want serious results." His voice was low, confident, but there was a warmth there that immediately put me at ease. Gabriel explained that he worked part-time at Elite Fitness and part-time at his private physical therapy clinic, specializing in post-trauma recovery and conditioning for beginners. "I don't work with people who want to get huge or compete in bodybuilding," he said directly. "I work with people who want to get their lives back." Initially, I was uncomfortable with the idea of physical closeness that personal training would require. After months of avoiding human contact, the prospect of having someone correct my posture, touch my arm to demonstrate movements, and watch my every repetition made me anxious. But there was something about Gabriel's professional yet warm approach that reassured me. We quickly discovered we were opposites in many ways. I was cerebral and cautious, he was intuitive and confident. I analyzed every movement before executing it. He trusted instinct and experience. But we both shared an impeccable work ethic and a natural tendency toward introspection that created a solid foundation for our professional partnership. The first few sessions with Gabriel completely transformed my gym experience. He showed infinite patience, explaining not only how to do each exercise, but why it was important, how it related to my specific goals, and how it fit into the overall program he had developed for me. During posture corrections, Gabriel would touch my shoulder or adjust my position with technical, professional touches. But I started to notice that these contacts lasted maybe a second longer than strictly necessary. His hands were firm but gentle, conveying confidence and knowledge through simple physical contact. Our breaks between sets became little oases of conversation. Gabriel asked about my design projects with genuine interest, making smart connections between visual creativity and physical discipline. He shared stories of other clients who had overcome similar challenges, always respecting confidentiality but offering inspiring examples of transformation. "Recovery isn't just physical," he told me during a particularly challenging session. "It's about regaining confidence, rediscovering who you really are when you remove all the layers of disappointment and self-sabotage." Those words echoed in my mind for days. During stretches, Gabriel guided my poses with meticulous attention to detail. He positioned my spine, adjusted my feet, moved my arms to maximize each stretch. These were moments of closeness that made my heart race for reasons I initially attributed only to the physical exercise. We discovered similar musical tastes. We both appreciated contemporary jazz, something rare among people our age. Gabriel often played Miles Davis or John Coltrane during our sessions, creating a sophisticated soundtrack for my transformation journey. Small rituals began to emerge naturally. Gabriel always checked if I had drunk enough water, I always brought extra coffee by chance, and we both extended our post-workout conversations for a few precious minutes that became the highlights of my mornings. As the weeks went by, I started to face internal conflicts I hadn't anticipated. The growing attraction I felt for Gabriel left me confused and scared. Was I confusing gratitude and admiration with something deeper? Was Gabriel just professionally attentive with all his clients? Or was there something special about our dynamic? The fear of misinterpreting signals and creating an awkward situation made me anxious before every session. I analyzed every conversation, every smile, every casual touch, looking for hidden meanings that probably only existed in my imagination, which was starved for human connection. At the same time, well-meaning friends started subtly pressuring me to start dating again. "You need to move on, Connor," they'd say. "Marcus has been with someone else for months. You can't be alone forever." This external pressure intensified my internal confusion about the emerging feelings Gabriel was arousing in me. There was also the paralyzing fear of repeating the patterns that contributed to my marriage's failure. What if I was just projecting emotional needs onto Gabriel? What if my need for connection was making me create romantic fantasies where only normal professional interactions existed? On the other side of this equation, I was starting to notice subtle signs that suggested Gabriel was also wrestling with something. He would invent exercises that required more physical corrections than normal. His eyes would linger on me for a few extra seconds when I wasn't paying attention. He would ask personal questions that, while appropriate in the context of a trainer-client relationship, seemed to carry a curiosity that transcended the professional. During a particularly intense session, Gabriel casually commented that he had never met anyone who combined creative discipline with physical determination the way I was demonstrating. "There's something special about the way you dedicate yourself to things, Connor," he said. And there was something in the tone of his voice that made my stomach flutter in a way that had nothing to do with the ab exercises we had just done. The unspoken tension between us grew with each session, creating an atmosphere charged with possibilities that neither of us dared to verbalize. I found myself arriving at the gym earlier, just to get a few extra minutes of conversation. Gabriel began suggesting exercise variations that required his closer assistance, creating moments of physical proximity that tested the limits of the professional relationship we theoretically maintained. 6 weeks had passed since I started training with Gabriel, and the tension between us had reached a point where every session felt like a tightrope ready to snap. It was a Friday night, a time when the gym was practically empty, just a few dedicated regulars and the cleaning crew preparing to close up. Gabriel had suggested this different time to work on more complex exercises without the distractions of the morning rush. "We need to focus on your coordination without rushing," he said. But there was something in the way he avoided my gaze that suggested deeper motivations. The atmosphere was different. The main lights had been dimmed, creating a more intimate setting. The sound system was playing something soft and instrumental, quite different from the energetic beats of business hours. Every breath seemed amplified in the almost empty space. Every movement subtly echoed on the mirrored walls. We were working on functional exercises that required balance and coordination. Gabriel positioned a suspension training rig in the center of the free area, creating a series of movements that tested my core stability. With every adjustment he made to my posture, his fingers lingered on my skin, as if he were memorizing the texture through the fabric of my t-shirt. "Feel the tension here," he murmured, placing a hand on my lower abdomen to demonstrate the correct muscle engagement. The touch sent waves of heat through my body that had nothing to do with physical exercise. We stayed like that for a few eternal seconds, me trying to focus on breathing while I felt the warmth of his palm through the thin cotton of my shirt. When our eyes met in the mirror in front of us, it was impossible to pretend that this was just professional. There was an intensity in Gabriel's gaze that made my heart race in a way that 12 weeks of cardio had never managed to. The air around us seemed charged with electricity, like those moments before a storm when all the hairs on your body stand on end in anticipation. "Connor?" Gabriel said my name like a whispered prayer, his voice huskier than usual. "I need to tell you something." The moment had arrived. Weeks of lingering glances, touches that lasted seconds longer than necessary, conversations that danced around unsaid feelings. I felt like I was at the top of a roller coaster, about to plummet at a speed that would change everything irreversibly. He gently let go of the equipment from my hands, allowing me to turn and face him completely. The physical proximity was stunning. I could feel the heat radiating from his body, hear his slightly accelerated breathing, and smell the masculine cologne that had become so familiar during our sessions. "Since the third session," Gabriel began, his words coming out slowly, as if each one was carefully weighed, "I knew something different was happening here." His eyes never left mine as he spoke. "It's not just professional, Connor. I can't pretend it is anymore." My world stopped. For weeks I had tortured myself, wondering if the feelings were mutual, if I was projecting my own needs onto a dynamic that only existed in my head. Hearing Gabriel verbalize what I felt but never dared to express was like feeling the ground move beneath my feet. "Me too," I managed to whisper, my voice weaker than I intended. I thought I was going crazy. What happened next transcended any physical or emotional experience I had ever had. Gabriel slowly raised his hand, as if approaching a wild animal that might run away at any moment. When his fingers finally touched my face, it was like completing an electrical circuit that had been half-connected for months. His lips found mine with a softness that contrasted with the intensity of the feelings that had accumulated during so many weeks of restraint. The first kiss was hesitant, almost reverent, like two explorers discovering new, sacred territory. But as the reality of the moment set in, the repressed passion exploded like a dam finally giving way to the pressure of the water. My hands found Gabriel's broad back, feeling the muscles I had discreetly observed during so many sessions. His skin was warm through the cotton t-shirt, and I could feel his heart beating fast against my chest as he pulled me closer. The environment around us seemed to have completely disappeared. There was no longer the gym, no mirrors, no city outside. There was only the two of us, finally admitting through touch what we had denied verbally for so long. Gabriel gently guided me until we were leaning against a mirrored wall, his lips never leaving mine. The cold glass against my back created a delicious contrast with the heat radiating from his body pressed against mine. Each kiss was a discovery, each touch a silent confession of months of carefully controlled desire. His hands explored my body with the same meticulous attention he dedicated to the exercises, getting to know every contour, every reaction, every spot that made me sigh involuntarily. It was as if he were sculpting my response with the same precision he had used to sculpt my physique during our workouts. The encounter unfolded like a slow-motion symphony, each note sustained to the limit, each pause charged with anticipation. Our bodies moved together with the natural synchronization we had developed over months of shared exercises, each instinctively knowing the other's rhythm and limitations. When we finally broke apart, breathing heavily, we remained embraced in silence for long minutes. The sweat from our foreheads mingled, creating an intimacy that transcended any physical contact I had ever experienced before. It was as if we had crossed a bridge of no return, and we both knew it. "This changes everything," Gabriel whispered against my ear, his warm breath making my whole body vibrate in response. Reality hit like a cold bucket of water a few minutes later when we heard footsteps echoing down the external hallway. We quickly separated, trying to compose our appearances and our breathing before someone could walk in and find us in a compromising situation. Gabriel ran his hands through his hair, trying to smooth the strands my fingers had disheveled. I moved away from the mirrored wall, checking that my t-shirt was in place and trying to control the tremor in my hands. The intimate moment had been replaced by a sharp awareness of the implications of what had just happened. "Connor," Gabriel said, his voice recovering some professional composure, although his eyes still carried the emotional intensity of the previous minutes. "We need to talk about this." The person we had heard approaching walked right past our floor, probably the cleaning crew checking the equipment. The relief of not having been discovered was temporary. We both knew we had crossed a line that would change our dynamic forever. We sat on a nearby bench, maintaining a respectful distance but still feeling the magnetic energy that pulsed between us. Gabriel explained that Elite Fitness's policy on relationships between staff and clients was strictly prohibited. Not only could he lose his job, but he could also face ethical problems with his professional license. "I can't continue being your trainer," he said, and there was genuine sadness in his voice. "It would be unethical on my part, and we deserve a chance to explore this without professional barriers." The emotional impact of this revelation was complex. On one hand, I felt relief knowing our feelings were mutual, and there was a real possibility of a relationship. On the other, the prospect of losing our shared routine, our special moments at the gym, our legitimate excuse to spend time together, created deep anxiety. Over the next 20 minutes, we discussed the practical options. Gabriel knew other personal trainers at the gym who could take over my training. Amanda Richardson, an experienced professional specializing in long-term transformations, would be an excellent substitute. The transition would be professional and well-structured. But there was also the deeper emotional question. Were we ready for a real romantic relationship? I was still processing the end of my marriage, still battling deep insecurities about my ability to maintain a healthy relationship. Gabriel had his own complexities. A demanding career, clients who depended on him, a professional reputation that had taken years to build. "I don't want you to feel like you're losing something important," I said, referring not just to the professional aspect, but also to the potential complications a relationship with me could bring to his well-structured life. Gabriel looked at me with an intensity that made my stomach churn again. "Connor, what I gain with you is infinitely more valuable than anything I might be risking." His words carried a conviction that instantly dispelled many of my insecurities. We decided he would introduce me to Amanda the following Monday, creating a smooth transition that would respect both professional ethics and our emerging feelings. We also agreed to meet over the weekend, outside the gym environment, for a real talk about our expectations and fears. When we finally left Elite Fitness that night, we both knew we were embarking on a completely new journey, one that would require courage, honesty, and a willingness to rebuild our lives around a connection that had unexpectedly grown in a gym on a random Thursday morning. The following Monday arrived, loaded with a mix of nervousness and anticipation that had been with me since I woke up. Gabriel had sent me a message on Sunday confirming he had talked to Amanda and she was willing to take over my training that week. "She's excited to work with you," the message said, followed by, "I'll see you at 7 a.m. to make the transition. After that, we are officially no longer trainer and client." I arrived at Elite Fitness 15 minutes early, as I always did, but this time my morning ritual was loaded with completely new meanings. Every piece of equipment I saw reminded me of a specific moment Gabriel and I had shared. The treadmill where he first corrected my running posture, The free weights where I learned to trust my own strength. The mirror where our eyes had met so many times before we finally admitted our feelings. Amanda Richardson was waiting at the reception when I arrived. A woman in her 40s with a contagious energy and a genuine smile that immediately put me at ease. Gabriel appeared a few minutes later, maintaining a completely professional demeanor, but I could notice the subtle tension around his eyes that indicated he was just as nervous as I was about this transition. "Connor, I want to introduce you to Amanda," Gabriel said, his voice carrying the official tone I knew so well from our first meetings. "She has 8 years of experience in body transformations and will be perfect for the next phase of your program." There was an almost imperceptible pause before the word program, as if he were remembering that we were no longer just trainer and client. Amanda proved to be extremely competent and thoughtful, asking detailed questions about my goals, limitations, and progress so far. Gabriel stayed with us for the first 30 minutes, technically explaining every aspect of the program we had developed together, transferring not only information, but also the personalized care and attention that had characterized our work together. "Gabriel told me about your impressive progress," Amanda said, reviewing the tracking sheets he had meticulously prepared. "I rarely see such consistent transformations in such a short time. You guys did an exceptional job together." Her words carried a professional acknowledgement that filled me with pride, both for my own progress and for the quality of the work Gabriel had done with me. When it was time for Gabriel to officially say goodbye as my trainer, there were a few seconds of awkward silence. The three of us stood there, Amanda organizing papers, Gabriel checking his watch, and me trying to process that the routine that had been so central to my life for months was coming to an end. "Well," Gabriel finally said, extending his hand in a formal handshake that contrasted dramatically with the intimacy we had shared the previous Friday. "It was a pleasure working with you, Connor. I'm sure you'll continue to progress excellently with Amanda." His fingers squeezed mine for a fraction of a second longer than professional protocol would require, and I could see a mix of sadness and anticipation in his eyes. "Thanks for everything," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "You changed my life in ways I didn't even know were possible." The words had a double meaning, obvious to both of us, but subtle enough for Amanda to perceive nothing more than normal client-to-trainer gratitude. After Gabriel walked away to attend to other clients, Amanda and I started our first official session. She was competent and motivating, definitely qualified to continue my physical progress, but I inevitably felt the absence of the special chemistry that Gabriel and I had developed. It wasn't her fault. There was simply no way to replicate months of gradual connection and mutual growth in a single morning. During the workout, I occasionally saw Gabriel working with other clients on the other side of the gym. Sometimes our eyes would meet briefly, and he would give me a small, discreet nod that Amanda could interpret as normal professional courtesy, but that to me carried promises of future encounters outside that environment. "Gabriel spoke very highly of you," Amanda commented during a break between exercises. "He said he's never trained anyone so dedicated and responsive. It's rare for a trainer to show so much personal investment in a client's success." There was something about the way she said personal investment that made me wonder if she suspected something, but her expression remained completely professional. At the end of the session, when Amanda was finalizing my program for the next few days, Gabriel casually approached to check in on the transition. It was a perfectly plausible excuse that allowed a few minutes of conversation between the three of us. "Everything went perfectly," I reported, trying to sound enthusiastic about my new training dynamic. "Amanda already has some interesting ideas to vary the routine." It was true, but a part of me felt melancholic that this phase was coming to an end. "Great," Gabriel said. And then, looking directly at me with an intensity that made my stomach flutter again, he added, "I hope you continue to find satisfaction in your fitness program." The word satisfaction was pronounced in a way that Amanda certainly interpreted as a reference to physical results, but for me, it carried much deeper implications about the meetings we would have outside the gym. When I finally left Elite Fitness that morning, I felt a strange mix of loss and anticipation. I was officially losing the routine and connection that had been so fundamental to my recovery, but gaining the possibility of exploring something potentially much more significant and lasting. Topic 10. Conclusion and final reflection with call to action. Saturday night arrived with an anxiety I hadn't felt in years. Gabriel had suggested a small, discreet restaurant downtown, away from the gym and any place where we might run into his clients or colleagues. It was our first completely personal interaction, without the professional structure that had shaped our relationship until that point. I arrived 10 minutes early, as I always do when I'm nervous, and Gabriel showed up exactly on time. Seeing him in casual clothes, dark jeans and a navy blue shirt that brought out his eyes, was almost surreal after months of knowing only his professional gym persona. "You look different," were his first words, accompanied by a smile that was both familiar and completely new. More relaxed, less cautious. He was right. Without the trainer-client dynamic between us, I felt free to be more authentic, less worried about keeping up appearances or following protocols. Dinner unfolded in a way that completely exceeded my expectations. We talked for 3 hours, exploring aspects of our lives that we had never shared during our workouts. Gabriel told me about his decision to leave hospital physical therapy to focus on preventative fitness, motivated by the frustration of only treating problems instead of preventing them. I shared details about my divorce that I had never verbalized to anyone, including my insecurities about my ability to maintain healthy relationships. "You know what impresses me about you?" Gabriel said, our dessert long finished, but neither of us wanting to end the night. "Your courage to start over. Not just physically, but emotionally. A lot of people get stuck in what was, but you actively chose to build something new." His words touched something deep in me, validating a strength I didn't know I possessed. "That was only possible because of you," I replied honestly. "Not just the training, but the way you saw me, as a person with potential, not as a lost cause who showed up at the gym trying to make up for a bad divorce." It was the first time I had clearly articulated how Gabriel had been instrumental not only in my physical transformation, but in rebuilding my self-esteem. When we finally left the restaurant, Gabriel asked if I wanted to walk a bit before heading home. We walked through the downtown streets, talking about our future plans, our fears, our dreams. It was extraordinary how the physical intimacy we had shared on Friday had opened up space for an even deeper emotional intimacy. "Connor," Gabriel said when we reached my building, "I want you to know that this isn't just an adventure for me. It's not just attraction or misplaced gratitude. You've become a part of my life in a way I didn't expect, and I want to explore that properly, at our own pace, without pressure." We said goodbye with a soft kiss that promised continuity, not a conclusion. Walking up to my apartment that night, I reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with a simple decision to try and get in better shape, and had evolved into the possibility of completely rebuilding my capacity to love and be loved. 6 months later, Gabriel and I were officially living together, creating a domestic routine that combined our complementary personalities in a surprisingly harmonious way. A year later, during a hike in the Rocky Mountains that had become our favorite weekend activity, he proposed with a simple ring and a statement that referenced our first training session. "You taught me that the best transformations happen when we trust the process and the right partner." 2 years after we got married, we opened our own fitness and wellness studio, combining Gabriel's expertise in personal training with my skills in design and marketing strategy. The Transform Studio quickly became known for our holistic approach that considered both the physical and emotional transformation of clients. 5 years after that first hesitant meeting at Elite Fitness, we expanded our services to include relationship coaching and workshops on overcoming personal crises. Gabriel uses his physical therapy experience, and I apply insights on creativity and professional reinvention, helping couples and individuals navigate difficult transitions. Today, when I look back at that version of myself who showed up at the gym just looking to lose a few pounds and gain a little confidence, I'm amazed at the extraordinary journey that a simple decision to take better care of myself set in motion. Gabriel didn't just help me rebuild my body, he helped me rediscover my capacity for vulnerability, trust, and genuine love. Subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to get more stories like this. Our story proves that the most significant connections often emerge in moments when we are focused on our own growth, open to unexpected possibilities, and willing to trust the process even when we don't know exactly where it will lead us. What you hear here is just the beginning. The full, unfiltered stories with all the details you can imagine are available now. Check out the link in the description right now. If this journey of transformation and unexpected connection touched you in any way, subscribe to the channel to follow more stories about relationships that are born from the most unlikely moments. Leave your own experiences in the comments about how personal growth led to unexpected connections. Your stories can inspire others who are going through their own journeys of reconstruction. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episodes, where we will continue to explore how the best things in life often show up when we least expect them.